Hey, all you cool cats, ready for a little fun? That's what I thought. Pop Talk, Scooby-Doo-Wah-Doo-Wah, Pop Talk. The fun never stops, you know. Pop Talk, if you're a nerd or a jock, run, don't just walk, get ready to rock, you got Pop Talk.
Now, from Funko Hollywood, it's time for Pop Talk.
Hey everybody, I'm Brian Mariotti, CEO of Funko, and welcome to our brand new show, Pop Talk, with our first ever guest, Elijah Wood.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Welcome on. This is, no one knows how this is going to go, but I'm going to fire a bunch of hopefully whimsical, fun, silly pop culture questions at you.
Awesome.
While you're doing that, feel free to build your own pop in any way you want, fiddle around with it, and you ready to get started?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Hey, first thing I got to ask, what do you collect? Do you collect anything?
I do. I'm a big record collector.
Okay.
I've collected a lot of things over the years. When I was younger, I was obsessed with toys. So I was a Star Wars collector, Batman action figures for a while. I've always been a music fan since I was pretty young and had a lot of CDs for a long time, so that was kind of the primary collection, and then I moved to vinyl, so that's my primary thing now. You know, the thing about vinyl that's so nice, unlike CDs and maybe DVDs as well, is I think they look really pretty. A wall of records is akin to a wall of books, I think. It's an attractive thing to have. CDs, not as much, you know. DVDs, a little bit, you know, there's sort of a book quality to them as well.
Nice, nice. So, pop culture, obviously aware, at least. You ever been to a Comic-Con event? San Diego, New York, Chicago, somewhere? Have you ever been to one of those?
Have I been to a Comic-Con event?
I have to ask.
Yes, I have.
Okay.
I have. My very first experience with Comic-Con was San Diego Comic-Con. Shortly, I think before the first Lord of the Rings movie came out. So it was relatively early on, and you know, as far as our experience in Lord of the Rings and Lord of the Rings in general, it wasn't a massive thing yet.
Yeah.
So we were able to kind of walk around the convention
as yourself,
relatively unscathed, and it was kind of a lovely thing.
Yeah.
And also, Comic-Con then was not what it is now.
Yes.
It was still a massive thing, but the industry hadn't taken over yet.
Yeah.
It wasn't the place to launch things quite the way that it is now. There wasn't as much press there. Certainly paparazzi weren't there yet. So it felt still like, as massive as it was, there was an intimacy to it as well, which was really cool. That disappeared over the years. And certainly as the Lord of the Rings became really successful, it became really hard to just simply walk around, which is a bummer because it is such an awesome convention, and there's amazing artists, and you know, there are people selling incredible toys, and there's a lot to see. I have, over the years, actually gotten masks and walked around.
So I grew up on cartoons. The most important thing for me when I was a kid was breakfast cereal, sugary breakfast cereal.
Oh, sure.
and cartoons on Saturday morning. So did you grow up watching cartoons? And if so, what did you watch?
I did. What did I watch? I have a lot of nostalgic memories for some cartoons that may not be the most popular in people's minds. There was a show called The Raccoons. Do you remember that show?
No.
It was a bunch of raccoons in the forest and their adventures. But the animation style was really specific, and a lot of the raccoons had these kind of like these noses that beaked out kind of like this. They looked like faucets for some reason. That was just a show that I really loved. The Wuzzles, do you remember the Wuzzles?
I do remember the Wuzzles, yes.
That's another show. There's so many. There are obvious shows to talk about, but things like that, no one ever mentions that show anymore. The Wuzzles is great. The Wuzzles the concept was hybrid animals.
Yeah.
So it'd be like an elephant mixed with a hippo. Every character was a hybrid animal. I love that show too.
It's good. Very cool.
Yeah.
So you brought up the record collection. Do you remember? I remember mine, and my dad gave me money, and I bought Queen the Game. That was my first album. Do you remember the first album you bought, and with your own money, like your first foray into? Do you remember what that was?
The very first, it's sort of a two-parter. The very first record I had, or that I bought, not with my own money, but I requested my mom to buy it, was The Best of the Temptations, because my favorite song at that time was My Girl. So I was obsessed with that. I think the very first thing that I bought with my own money was the Batman soundtrack by Prince.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Wow.
I grew up with Prince. My brother is
Yeah.
a huge Prince fan,
Yeah.
and I subsequently became a massive Prince
Yeah.
fan as well. And so that record would have been the very first thing that I
Very
bought
cool.
with my own money. Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, now we get into the real hard-hitting questions that, I mean, you know, that only like the top journalists have ever asked you before. Burgers, tacos, or pizza? If you just had to have one and you were starving to death and you're like, God, I am craving what? Which ones are you gonna pick out of those three?
Pizza.
Okay. Okay.
I love them all.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Pizza's my go-to.
Are you?
Any day,
Yeah.
if I would have pizza over almost anything. I do love pizza.
The whole war of thin crust versus thick crust. Where are you at with that?
I don't believe that there's any pizza that is worthless, right?
Yep.
I love them all.
That's good.
I think if I were to pick a favorite, Neapolitan style, so
Okay.
like wood burning
Yep,
oven.
yep.
You've got a nice char, a little bubbling
Yeah.
of the crust.
That's-
My
that
mouth is watering
sounds
now.
good.
It's so good.
If you could have any car, and it doesn't have to be the most expensive car,
Sure.
just if I could have any car, what would the car be?
It's tough. I've got a few favorites.
Yeah, yeah.
It's tough to pick a single one. The first one that came to mind, though, is the Studebaker Avanti.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So Studebaker is not known for making sports cars.
Yeah.
But in the 1960s, late 60s, they released the Avanti, which had pop-up headlights and this really sleek body that I believe, I hope this is correct, I believe it was designed by the guy who designed the Coke bottle.
Wow.
I could be wrong.
Yeah,
and someone would have to Google
Yeah,
this.
it's good.
But it had there's a designer of note, and I think that's the designer of this car because it doesn't look
Yeah.
like any other
Yeah.
Studebakers.
Yeah.
I just love that car.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. You're an actor, so producer, but what's your favorite movie of all time?
Dude. Of all time.
I love that you struggle with this. It should be a little bit of a struggle, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It should be. It
Yeah.
shouldn't. Well, I mean, there are some people that are very good at
Yeah.
quickly identifying their
Yeah.
favorites of anything.
Yeah.
I've never been that person.
Yeah.
I love so many things,
Yeah.
and so it sort of changes with the wind
Yep.
and the temperature. But what I often go back to as my favorite, and I've said this before, and it's just so great, so I sort of stick with it. Despite the fact that there might be movies since that
Yeah.
I've fallen in love with
Yeah.
more, is a movie called Harvey with Jimmy Stewart.
Okay.
It was released in the 50s, I believe. It was originally a play, and it's about a man named Elwood Dowd who has a best friend who is an invisible 6-foot-tall white rabbit that nobody can see. And so it's this story, the whole movie takes place in a day, and it's a story about his sister who thinks he's losing his mind, his niece who also thinks he's losing his mind, and his sister's trying to gather this sort of social event, but Elwood keeps messing it up because he's the crazy person that believes in the white rabbit.
I am constantly making lists of favorite songs,
Uh-huh.
favorite albums, and favorite movies, and you have to come up with a criteria, right? Because your favorite might not be the best. You've
Yes,
never
that's
seen
true,
it.
that's true.
So my criteria on movies was, what was the movie that I left the movie theater where my mind was utterly blown? And the two that came to mind for me was always Moulin Rouge and The Matrix, and just what I saw from The Matrix.
I'll
I
never
was seeing-
forget that experience.
I was seeing things I've never seen before.
You know, those sort of movies that do scramble your brain in that way and take you somewhere that you had not imagined you'd go is just, it's why we go to the movies.
Yeah,
You know?
it's pretty cool that can have an impact on you. I mean, 20 years later, 30 years later, you're still remembering that, you know, that experience, and it's such a neat.
I remember, the first time I saw it, there's so many movies that did that to me, but seeing, thinking about the theatrical experience, like seeing David Lynch's Mulholland Drive in the theater.
Yeah.
And that totally unscrewed my brain.
Yeah.
My sister and I saw it together. We walked out and we were silent on the drive home. And I remember I was just so gobsmacked
Yeah.
by the film. And like halfway through the drive, I was like, "Did you like it?" She's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Do you know what just happened?" No. we couldn't explain it.
I know.
But it was electrifying.
Yeah.
You know?
It's what he did at Twin Peaks. I mean, think about how he broke every rule,
Oh,
and
God.
that was right in my college years, and just
How he was able to get away with that on network television is just a miracle. It's a miracle. Thank God for that.
Oh my God. I still remember bartending in college, and they basically flashed who Bob was in the mirror. And I had a glass pitcher in my hand, and I dropped it, and it shattered into the ice bin, and spent the next 45 minutes cleaning out the ice bin because there was glass in the ice bin. You can't see glass when you're looking at ice.
Of course.
And just visceral reaction to watching this as I was trying to bartend, right? And what he did, and then watching other shows that people still talk about today, and how he kind of set a standard that no one had ever seen before on TV, and he's just amazing.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. Elijah, best Christmas gift ever?
A particular Christmas stands out, and I think my brother and sister would agree. There's like this one Christmas that just felt so magical, that I think all of us hold a certain nostalgia for. And that particular Christmas, one of the standout gifts, and this doesn't sound that exciting, but it was very exciting to us, is we got feather beds and down comforters. And I think my mom had actually put them on the bed. So like it was all made up. And that was in addition to other things, but it was just, it sounds so silly. It's not like open something up and be like, wow, that's an amazing toy or whatever. But it was just, it was a really lovely, it was a lovely thing.
Nice.
Yeah. It was also that year, it was the first time we got laptops. So we all got laptops as well. And this is super dating us, and it's very funny. They were PowerBook 180Cs. So PowerBook, which was an Apple laptop. 180 stood for 180 megabytes. The C stood for color.
Oh boy. Yeah. Nice.
And it had one of the, it was the trackball that you could take out and like you could buy like third-party trackballs with like eyeballs and 8-ball or whatever that you could put in there. And I think it had 8 megabytes of RAM.
Oh boy. Yeah.
And that computer was like, it became a real gaming source for me. So like, if you remember, like, of course you do, floppy disks, you would get a game, and a game like that would come with 5 floppy disks that you'd have to load. Load the first one, it would like imprint onto the computer, ask for disk 2, ask for disk 3, and you'd like load everything onto the computer. I have a lot of fond memories of that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so Lord of the Rings, obviously, massive franchise, lots of products made of you.
Yes.
Which is just got to be surreal.
Yeah, but so cool.
You got popped. I mean, and you got multiple pops, right? So what did it feel like? I have to ask you, what did it feel like to be popped? To see, potentially these pops around.
Hey!
There you go. I have to imagine at least one person has come up to you with a pop and asked you to sign one of these things. But what does it feel like to be popped?
It's incredible. I mean, growing up with toys, growing up with action figures, and action figures from movies or TV shows that I loved, the idea that I would ever be in a film that would have merchandise of my character was such a thrilling thing. Yeah. So knowing that was going to be a part of Lord of the Rings, even before the films were released, it was clear that there was going to be a fair amount of merchandise. It was so thrilling to me. It speaks to the nerd in me that loves this sort of thing. Yeah. So to be a part of that in that way is really special.
Did you grow up watching horror movies as a kid?
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Yeah. So like
I did. Yeah. So again, my brother's 7 years older than me. He was renting horror movies with his friends from the local video store, and would like include me in the watching of it just as long as I didn't tell our mom and our dad. So I got exposed to horror movies at like 5 and 6 years of age. The trauma of horror films hit me a little earlier than that. I remember the Michael Jackson Thriller video re-airing, because it aired, I think I was too young when it first aired, but re-airing on MTV and it being kind of a big deal. And it like whatever imagery I saw freaked me out enough, like the preview images
Yeah.
on MTV, that I was like, I want nothing to do
Yeah.
with this. So it was airing on TV, and I remember running to the basement because that was safer somehow.
Yeah, the basement's always
than,
safer.
Than
yeah.
watching.
Yeah, then up above on
Thriller.
ground level.
So
yes.
that stands out as being freaked out. But beyond that, like I was exposed to horror movies early and loved them.
And obviously just produced one, Mandy.
Yes,
so tell us about Mandy, why you got involved.
Sure.
And yeah.
So Mandy, I have a production company called Spectre Vision.
Yep.
We produce horror and genre films. Mandy is, I wouldn't really call it a horror movie. It's a revenge movie.
Okay.
It's a phantasmagorical, total, fever dream nightmare of a revenge story. Definitely its own thing. Mandy was a case where we had seen the director Panos Cosmatos' first film, Beyond the Black Rainbow, and loved it.
Yeah.
And reached out to him. And we were like, look, we love Beyond the Black Rainbow. We want to do whatever it is that you want to do next.
Yeah.
Whatever it is we want to be involved. We just think you're brilliant and you're a visionary. He pitched us the idea, and we're like, that sounds incredible. And then he sent us the script, and we fell in love with it. And that's kind of how it came to be. It took about 5 years to get made, as often it does in independent cinema. These things, especially movies that are slightly left of center or not immediately accessible to people, it takes a little bit longer, but it's so worth it when you get to make something like that.
So speaking of which, for the first time ever, we wanted to show you. There's Miller.
That is
and
so
there is Mandy.
awesome.
So there you go. The first ever Mandy Pops.
Now see, I'm gonna say something here. Like, okay, yeah. All right, so having been a part of something like Lord of the Rings and getting to personally be a Funko Pop and to be an action figure is a true joy. I have to say, getting to make something as a producer and see something made from the ground up and then have that translate to this is actually in some ways more meaningful. Cool. This is really insane. And the detail, like the t-shirt she's wearing, the book that she's holding, the cigarette, I mean, I cannot. Red, having been through quite a lot, as you can see, we really put him through the ringer, poor Nick Cage in that movie.
Our fans do love blood splattered Pops.
Yeah.
I mean,
thank you so much. It really is such a treat.
That is.
These turned out so beautifully.
Glad to show it to you. So I can't thank you enough. What a great time, and thank you for being our. There's only can be one first guest ever. So Elijah,
I didn't realize I was the first until
that's
today.
That's it. Elijah Wood, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Well, do you want to see what I made?
Yeah, let's. Oh yeah.
So this whole time I went to a mustache, but when I did the mustache, it was very Freddie Mercury. So I was like, it's just Freddie Mercury. I can't get around from that. So I did this. I went with the white pants. I really do like white T-shirt, white pants.
It's
and
a
white
bit.
shoes.
It's a bit Hannibal Lecter.
It is. Or like late '60s era John Lennon, maybe.
There you go. There you go.
Know?
Yep.
And I don't know why the hobby horse. I had many options. There was a scepter. There was, I could have done a handbag of some kind.
Yes.
But I went with the hobby horse. It just sort of, it lightens him a little bit. There's a little bit of a Warhol vibe to this as well.
There is
I love those glasses.
That's definitely.
I would wear that outfit.
There you go. All right. Fantastic, my friend. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
This has been really fun.
Yeah, it's good. All right.
Awesome.
Guys? Thanks, man. That was, dude, thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
That was really fun.
No worries.